This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Good morning, True Seekers and True Crime Junkies. Welcome back to another episode of Hit the Road Jack, Finding the Zodiac. We are going to finish off with the balance of the podcast that I did with David Villa and San Joaquin Valley Transparency. Once we're completed with that, I'm going to go ahead and answer many of the questions that were posed during that podcast so that all of us get some answers. So without any hesitation, we're going to go ahead and put that presentation back on and finish that off, and I'll see you in about 20 minutes. Testimony of medical experts shows that only 10 to 30% of rape victims have visible injury that can be seen by the naked eye under bright light, contrary to the DA's medical examiner's testimony. And subsequent testimony of medical experts shows that intact sperm is only motile within 12 hours of being deposited. Again, that is also based on, heat or cold. And we know that when her body was taken from the house at 8:30 p.m. on Sunday evening, she was placed in a refrigerator. That would have helped things to last a little bit longer. Let's see. And then for the next 12 hours, the tails begin to separate, rendering them no longer motile within 24 hours. So again, this does not take us all the way back to 12:48 p.m. between that 12 and 1 o'clock hour that they're claiming the murder occurred. This is another piece of evidence that Mr. Wilson asked me to examine, which was a property log. And there are actually 3 property logs that he provided to me. And as you go through them, you can see for yourself the differences in the actual handwriting and the entries. Things are being scratched out, they're being obliterated, they're being whited out. And the final actual property report, which is on slide number 14, is where it contains the officer's handwriting stating removed 1 vial, and he removed it on March 31st, 1996. Why? If you took this to the lab, why would it not go with the other vial? Why would it not go with the other evidence? And I would think that this would be something you would strictly keep separate, the arresting officer versus forensic evidence collected going to a lab, so that the chain of custody is not necessarily confused, but compromised. If the arresting officer has, some grit in this for needing to get out from under the things he's done, such as an illegal search and seizure, or he's just trying to set the community's mind at ease that they've caught the killer, when in fact he's actually doing something that's nefarious, and it has cost this man 30 years of his life.
Wow.
And that blows my mind. The property reports should not look like this. These property reports should not vary. They should not be different. They should not be having different entries, right, Nolan? You should have 1 log.
I don't see why the cops are so gung-ho on the one guy and so lax on the other guy.
Right. Well, because the other guy's the one that called the police.
Well, yeah. Do we have a recording of the phone call? The 911 call?
I have no idea.
Because I'm curious as to what he told the police.
No shit.
Did he implicate his roommate and
right.
try to?
I don't believe he did. I believe the statement. I think I do have those answers in the documents, and I want to say that Mr. Wilson had indicated that he had just told the police that Mr. Wilson found her.
Okay.
Not necessarily that he implicated it, but my roommate found her dead in the basement, kind of thing. I would have to go back to look to see what was exactly what was said.
He did find her, but next question, why didn't Wilson call himself?
Because he was assessing her.
Okay, so he was down there, hey, call the cops, I found her dead. Okay.
Yeah. And like I said,
I'm curious to hear or to find out if it's out there what was actually said during the call.
right.
They should have a recording that all 911 calls are recorded. So his lawyer at some point should have requested that recording way back when.
And it took Mr. Coleman 8 minutes to call the police. He was hawing around.
Okay.
What's that?
So when your client said, "Call the cops, she's dead," blah blah blah, he waited 8 minutes instead of just doing it immediately. Is what you're saying?
Yes, he was basically, based on my recollection of what Mr. Wilson said in his paperwork, was that Mr. Coleman was basically bucking back from wanting to make that call. And it took him literally 8 minutes from the time her body was discovered to actively make that 911 call.
Well, that's kind of weird, too. Did he share that with the cops? He says, "Hey, I asked him to call that. He waited for... Why wait?"
I don't know if at that moment in time when he was going through what he was going through that he had the wherewithal to slow down and think about Mr. Coleman's actions. Don't know that if he really believed he was the murderer at that moment in time. So he may not have, remembered to state these particular things to the police.
Right, but I'm just saying he obviously was sure he didn't do it.
Yes.
But he didn't. I don't know. I would immediately suspect the other guy.
Well, we would. Come on. If we know we're innocent, I'm going to go in with somebody. But would you blame somebody else that you particularly knew? If Coleman's saying,
why did you not immediately call the cops when I asked you to?
Right. And if Coleman was making out like, "Oh, I just got home too," you know what I'm saying? Like, he may very well have believed his roommate that his roommate wasn't a part of it either. He just didn't see himself being hemmed up for something he didn't do himself.
The report evidence that you've been reading doesn't say hardly anything about Coleman.
No.
Well, any statements, any interviews, any evidentiary moves taken, investigative moves, it just neglects it, basically, right?
And maybe Coleman was bad mouthing Mr. Wilson, right?
Yeah, I would say had to have said something.
Right.
Try to throw him under the bus.
Point the direction towards him to where when they came to investigate, they were already suspecting him.
Right. And if Mr. Wilson wasn't suspecting Mr. Coleman, he would have no reason to badmouth him or to point the finger that direction.
He didn't know. He didn't know anyway, either. He didn't know what happened, right?
Right.
Are there transcripts of the entire trial?
I believe Mr. Wilson is in possession of them. I do have many. I don't think I have everything by any means, but I do believe that he is in possession after 30 years of all of the trial transcripts.
Makes me wonder, as far as like Mr. Wilson, right? Because he was obviously convicted by 12 jurors, right?
Who were force-fed what the DA wanted them to be force-fed. Yes.
And the police, the DA and the police. But at some point, someone's got to have justice. I mean, you're not there just to convict. You're there as an officer of the court to promote justice.
I was watching a documentary regarding Karen Reed and the officer that was killed with her boyfriend. And the entire time I'm watching the documentary, and I can't help, right. I can't help but think how can she be convicted in this case? How could Mr. Wilson be convicted when, for instance, in the Karen Reed case, the other female officer was looking stuff up on Google and then deleting it? In this case, there's another gentleman that could possibly have done it. So how could the jury say guilty? Aren't you? Isn't if there's reasonable doubt, aren't you supposed to say not guilty?
If we could forget the fact that the police officer planted his blood at the crime scene. So this is what I believe that they hung their hat on, was the presence of his blood on Miss Kim at the actual scene of the crime. And that's where we get into this. So on So on slide number 14, we see the removal of one vial on the 31st of March, 1996. This may also be why they hesitated and waited to call out the coroner, and that the forensics was still busy in the middle of doing whatever they were doing and wouldn't allow the coroner to go downstairs and address the body.
He has a duty to get there and do his thing as soon as possible.
Who found the blood on the woman? Was it done at the lab?
No, the forensic team at the scene of the crime purportedly found the blood. I have a couple more. I wanted to show, just before we get into the handwriting, a couple more pieces of exculpatory evidence on slide number 15, which is, again, the receipt at the top says taken from the backpack. So I was also asked to look at this handwriting at the top here. That belongs to, I discovered that it belongs to Officer Michael Yore. So he did, in fact, take this receipt from the backpack before he was granted the right to search. Wow. And then we see to the right of that, we see this paper that says non-transferable, subject to tariff regulations. And it says, I removed. Now, if I could tell you who this person was, we'd figure out who actually tampered with this particular file. But this document with this receipt was never provided to the defense team, and it subsequently went missing after it had been removed from the backpack. It had been copied, placed into the file as page number 120. Wait, let's see. This is page 126. And then to the right, which is now page 127, says, I removed, and I've blown that up with the signature of the individual who claims to have removed it. But it says, I removed page 126. So now all that's in the file is this one that says non-transferable, subject to tariff regulations. Do you know what that means, Nolan?
No.
Either way, the exculpatory evidence was no longer in the police file.
Police report. Tariff regulations.
What's that?
What do tariff regulations have to do with items in a police report or evidence?
I have no idea. So, but basically in 2007, Peter Wilson requested a copy of the police report from Palo Alto PD of page 126 because he saw that it was missing in the original documentation that he was given. He questioned his own defense attorney, who also said it was missing from his file. He never had a copy of it either. So Mr. Wilson requested this specific page and was given both of these two pages, the one that actually has the receipt that was not available at trial to the one that states I removed this particular page from the actual file. Now, same thing with the actual note. Here again, we have a photocopied version of the note that was found in his backpack that pertains to the actual alibi of him being at the restaurant and finding this woman's purse that everybody there, the busboy and the owner of the restaurant, confirmed, yes, this whole thing happened. And it says taken from the backpack, 31st of March, 96, 091 010, which is the case number. But again, to the right, this is another document. So page 9 was also missing. Now we have this page 9A that's shown up. And it again says, I removed page 9.
Wow.
And the only thing that was in the file was 9A. So he asks for a copy of this. And he actually did this, I believe. He says 5/10 of 2019 requests more documents from police file and receives this particular document on 3/25 of 2020. Another document that was taken from the backpack before the warrant was issued was removed from the file and the availability of the defense.
So he's actually filed a habeas, right?
Correct.
When did he file it? I think you only have a year from the discovery of the new evidence.
Well, he filed it pretty much immediately after getting the results back from the DNA lab and from me. And so he's just sitting in the rotation at this point. Here's where I actually did the handwriting of Mr. Yore. Where are you at? You're on 18. I'm on slide 17 for your viewers. Okay. But basically, I was able to actually map out all of the different characteristics of handwriting, the way he actually does the connection of the crossbar from the letter F straight into the R, the form and shape of the O's and the M's, the starting and stopping points, the actual, the way he forms the letter K's. Everything that I could find in Michael Yore's handwriting was a consistent match, including the numbering system to Officer Yore, Michael Yore. So he is the one that had taken both the alibi note from Rogers Restaurant, the receipt. Mr. Wilson also claims that he also took the $400 in cash that was in his backpack. That came up missing. That was never returned or given back to him. So there were several things that were taken from the backpack that he claims Mr. Yor had taken for himself. On slide number 18, once again, I'm comparing to the actual removal of the one vial and, again, the receipt itself, where it says taken from the backpack. I found that all of the handwriting characteristics were all consistent with each other. So, again, I made an identification that he is the one that removed a vial, at least on March 31st of 1996, a day before all the forensic evidence actually went to the lab.
Damn.
And then that brings us into slide number 19, which is really kind of the home run hit here, and that is the independent forensics DNA testing and technologies. DNA lab states that the degradation levels of Mr. Wilson's DNA is similar to identical from the crime scene and the reference sample that was taken by Palo Alto PD. And what that really means in layman's terms is that if blood is at a crime scene, open to the air, to different type of inclement weathers, we are going to see a type of degradation that occurs and takes place as this blood dries. The degradation scale on the DNA that was found at the crime scene was identical to the degradation level that was found absolutely in the vial of blood that was taken from Mr. Wilson's arm. And so that means that literally, I'm thinking here again, Mr. Yor is down there splashing this blood around while not allowing this coroner to come down. And then once the coroner comes down, they're immediately collecting it right after throwing it down. And that's how the degradation is so similar between what was in the vial and what was taken from Mr. Wilson.
Wow.
What would prompt them to do shit like that, though?
Secure conviction. Secure conviction.
You are talking to the right person here. I mean, David,
job is to collect evidence and do a report.
It is. But I don't think you understand what David does. David, tell Nolan, because I've not really discussed what it is that you do.
I do police accountability. I record police. I ask questions. I try to find patterns in what they do and how they police. 6 different police chiefs have resigned after being exposed on my channels. And
awesome.
We're working on the 7th one right now. This one police chief in Arvin, California was fired from a different department for stealing money. He was charged and convicted. I guess the Attorney General believes it's okay to allow these cops to do a probationary period, become reserve officers for a long period of time until they can get allowed to, get their licenses or be cops again. And we have one cop in Arvin nearby who not only did that, get fired, arrested, charged, goes to Maricopa, California, and harasses people, targeting Hispanic people, and that entire department, because of the scandal that happened out there, that entire department was disbanded, and he was out looking for a job somewhere else, gets hired in Arvin, becomes a chief of police using a different name, and now we're exposing him, trying to get him out of there. And this is what we see. The type of protection, umbrellas of protection that cops have, and it's unbelievable how bad cops are allowed to do stuff like this. And it seems like it probably isn't the first time Yor has ever done anything like this. And I would like to find out more about him. See if we can find out where he went, where he was policing, see if we can get any kind of records, even though I know they are destroyed so that the people cannot find anything about these cops.
Right.
It's funny that you mentioned Arvin, because I was born in Bakersfield, and a lot of my family went to high school in Arvin, and I got a lot of connections down there.
I live in Bakersfield now, but I'm close by to Arvin. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. My best buddy used to be the editor of the California newspaper, Bob Price. Now he does TV feature stories. Yeah,
I know who he is. Yeah, I know who he is.
He is. Yeah. He's a local celebrity.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Well, I think other than that, all that I really had left was kind of Mr. Wilson's evidence for the writ of habeas corpus, but I feel like we probably have covered a majority of that throughout the presentation. It definitely takes into consideration everything we've discussed, the forensic testimony, what we do know about forensics testified to by other great pathologists and coroners around, the United States. Also, the fact that the DNA degradation is similar to identical to what was taken from his arm, and that should never happen in a case like this. Well, so I'm here to hopefully expose this entire system and hopefully get people to pay attention so that he does get this right for a rehearing, because this man does, I believe, in my honest opinion, I believe he does not belong in prison for this murder.
Sounds like he doesn't. And it sounds like a terrible police work.
Yeah.
It does. Well, thank you, Nanette, and also Nolan. Thank you guys for coming on and sharing this. I hope we can get enough eyes on this and put enough pressure on them to, allow him to have a new trial. And it sucks to hear that he's ill, and hopefully he gets to see the light of day again.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And even then, I think that coming out of that, his mental health is going to take many, many years to get over what he has probably witnessed and gone through in prison.
It's like being a prisoner of war, prison.
And I thank you, David, for having us again on your show, because I appreciate anybody who can help us get this out there.
Very welcome.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Nolan.
Thank you both.
We'll definitely circle back around this. We'll find out updates, and we'll try to present updates as well. And anybody else that's watching this, please share this story, and let's get some eyes on this. Let's get this man, if he's innocent, let's get him free. And we're not supposed to allow cops to do bad stuff like this. And this is why it's important that we continue the work that we do. We don't have subscribers, we have supporters. So thank you guys.
Right.
And let's get some eyes on this.
One last comment is I have a criminal matter felony in Bakersfield next month. So maybe when I'm down there, we can maybe have some lunch or hook up or have a beer or something.
No doubt. Get my number. Get my number from Nanette.
Okay.
And I will keep everybody updated as I get more information on the case.
And everybody, I'm going to drop Nanette's link in the description and the pinned comment. Make sure you guys go show her some support.
I'm going to mention you to Bob, too, because maybe Bob could do a feature story on what you do.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.
All right, you guys. Everyone take care.
Cool.
Have a great weekend. Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Happy Easter, Nanette. Hope to see you soon.
All right, guys.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, so at the completion of that podcast, I do have additional information, and I would also like to show or share at least my screen. I have a PowerPoint presentation, which we saw David flipping back and forth through, but I'm not sure that anybody got a clear visibility. So as I describe and cover the questions, I'm going to slowly sift through these. That'll give everybody an opportunity to pause and read on your own accord. So what I wanted to really actually start with was the arriving at home. So one of the questions was what and how Mr. Wilson found Miss Kim. It says that at 1:10 a.m. on Sunday, 3/31/1996, I got out of the train at Palo Alto train station and walked toward the downtown area for about 15 minutes. Then stopped at the plaza on University Avenue, where there was a ceremony and the band started playing, and sat on the bench for about 45 minutes. At 2:10 a.m., I walked on University Avenue for about 10 minutes, then stopped in front of Walgreens drugstores for about 10 minutes, then walked on University Avenue toward the house about 20 minutes. At approximately 2:50 a.m., I arrived at home on 1160 Fulton Street and was in my room for about 10 minutes. At 3 a.m., I walked to 7-Eleven on Waverly Street for about 20 minutes and grabbed a juice and walked back home for about 20 minutes. Mr. Wilson also had a door to his bedroom, so he could leave through that door to exit to go wherever he wanted to go without having to walk through the house, which is why he was not aware at that point in time that Miss Kim was dead. He says at 3:40 a.m., I arrived at my room on 1160 Fulton Street, and I was in my room for about 5 minutes. At 3:45 a.m., I walked toward the toilet, And I believe that's where he finds Miss Kim. So he says at about 3:45 a.m. on Sunday, 3/31/1996, I walked toward the toilet, and when I passed the basement door, I noticed the basement door was open and its light was on. And when I looked down the stairs, I observed Hak-Ju Kim was lying on her back at the bottom of the stairs. I slowly walked down the stairs and saw Hak-Ju Kim lying on her back and naked from the waist up, and a very large wooden board on top of her shoulders. I tried to move the board, but the board was very heavy. I couldn't move it and walked up the stairs and walked toward William Coleman's room for help and yelled his name very loud, but he didn't come out. And when I opened his door, I saw William Coleman standing behind the door and fully dressed in blue jeans and white sweater and street shoes. William Coleman knew Hak-Ju Kim was already dead and he was fully clothed. I knew he didn't get out of the bed. I told him I found Jean, hurry up, come with me. I need his assistance. But he refused to come with me and said Hak-Ju Kim was already dead and there's nothing he could do for her. I slowly walked down the stairs again and told William Coleman call the police and tried to move the board, but the board was very heavy and I couldn't move it, and walked up the stairs again. William Coleman had called the police and we waited outside the house for the police. So basically, Mr. Wilson's assertion of the actual phone call was that, let's see, at 3:53 a.m. So like I'd indicated, 8 minutes after the notification to Mr. Coleman is when Mr. Coleman actually made that call. And this is going to be the thoughts of, or the testimony basically of Mr. Wilson, is that William Coleman had called 911 and told the operator, we just found Hak-Ju Kim in the basement. She was dead for 4 to 5 hours. She fell down the steps. There was some kind of dried blood, like all over things, and she was laying like on her back. William Coleman also told the operator he has been home a little earlier, but he never goes down. A lot of the time she parks her car in the driveway, but that doesn't mean that she is not here. Sometimes she goes with her sister. So interesting that, Mr. Coleman claims she was dead for 4 to 5 hours. And if he had never gone down and didn't know she was dead, how would he know any type of a time frame? So that really didn't make a lot of sense to me. But that brings us to the actual 911 transcript, which I do now have in possession. So basically, on March 31st of 1996, the voice comes on. This is Sandy Gagnon, communications supervisor for the communications division of the Palo Alto Police Department. Today is Saturday, May 11th, 1996 at 10 o'clock in the morning. The following is all the recorded information from the master tape for Sunday, March 31st, 1996, which relates to case number 96-091010. Voice, 3:53:28, March 31st. Beep, 3:53. Operator, 911. Coleman, yeah, could you send an ambulance to 1160 Fulton Street? My landlady, she's passed away. I think she's dead. Operator, okay, how old is she? Coleman, she's about 58. Operator, about 58? Coleman, yep. Operator, did she have any medical problems? Coleman, nope, she's in the ... We have a, what do you call it downstairs? It's like a basement to the house. Like you come into the kitchen and you go downstairs. Operator, Coleman, and she's ... I think she fell down there. She's ... And operator, okay, but you checked her and you can't find any pulse or anything? Coleman, nope, I think she's been there for ... Well, sometimes she parks her car in the driveway and she goes with her sister. Operator, so you don't know how long she's been down? Coleman, nope, but I think she's been there for a long time, maybe 4 or 5 hours or maybe longer. Operator, okay, are you a neighbor or do you live there? Coleman, I live there. I rent a room from her. Operator, okay, you just found her now? Coleman, yeah, we just found her. Dispatcher, I think she fell down the steps. Coleman, I think she ... There's some kind of dried blood, like all over the things, and she's laying like on her back, sort of. Operator, okay, I'm going to get the medics going, and the other dispatcher is going to talk to you, okay? Coleman, okay. Operator 2, okay, and your name is? Coleman, William Coleman, Coleman. Operator 2, okay, and you just came home now? Coleman, now I've been home a little earlier, but I never go down in ... And a lot of times she parks her car in the driveway, but that don't mean she's not here. Sometimes she goes with her sister. Operator 2, okay, well, paramedics are on their way and so are the police, Mr. Coleman, and they should be there momentarily. If you could meet them out in front. Coleman, okay, I'll meet them out in front. We live at Fulton and Kingsley. Now, for somebody who was so complacent, so not shocked when his own roommate attempted to tell him that he had found their landlady dead, is now seeming to be very confused. He's not directly answering the questions. He's ending questions or answers short and then bringing up completely different subjects, such as the vehicle that was parked in the driveway. I found that the answers that he's given just don't seem to be indicative of somebody who was completely unaware of the fact that she was already dead. And his behavior as well didn't either, because by indicating that she's dead, there's nothing you can do for her. That doesn't stop you from calling the police. That's the first thing you should do. So that helps to answer the first couple questions. And then we were asked, what county did this occur in? Santa Clara County is where the actual murder took place, and the trial was done in San Jose, California. It says, what was the race and the age of the renters? I'm still waiting on those answers from Mr. Wilson. What is Coleman's background? I'm still waiting on a response from him as in regards to that as well. And whether or not they took the same forensic evidence from William Coleman. We're waiting to see what happens there. Is there an evidence log on William Coleman? One of the things that I noticed when I was going through this, and in fact, I wanted to bring up really quickly before we go into it, is that one of the officers in his own report indicates that he was at work and he was called to the 1160 Fulton Street address. And as I continued to read this, I got extremely confused because it says his job is evidence collection. And I was going to assist with the plans, which I'm not sure what the plans are. I was contacted via radio by Sergeant DeStefano. He asked me to phone him, which I did. Sergeant DeStefano instructed us to halt any activity we were planning and then to return to the police station. So he indicated that he had not entered the residence yet, but he stood on the outside assisting with perimeter security. Evidence technician Lynn Dillard was with Officer D. Trujillo and had just come from inside the house. And one of his functions was to actually, with the police department in evidence collection, he was going to assist with the photography of the scene. So I think it's very important that we understand this. This is Officer G. Brooks in his own written report stating that he was there to photograph the scene, but then was called off and told to return to the police station. So it makes me kind of wonder, was this also part of what was going to be happening as far as the setup was concerned? I did talk to another client of mine who is former law enforcement, who indicated that Palo Alto is what the cops would refer to as a foo-foo area. And because they're foo-foo, they have lots of money in these areas, and these are not the type of crimes they like to see go unsolved, because it doesn't set the mind at ease of the people who live there that provide that community with the type of money that they have there. And so when somebody had indicated that, they just needed to secure a conviction, that's exactly what my client had basically said, was that they needed to pin this on somebody. They needed to call this murder solved. So that could have been the motivation, aside from the other things that Michael Yor had actually done by taking out the culpatory evidence from the backpack and so forth. So let's see here. Is there evidence? I'm asking about, obviously, the evidence log. His lawyer, we were asked who was his lawyer at the time. It was either a Mr. or Mrs. Parascu, which was likely a public defender, but I am waiting on the full information and name of that individual. It asked where Mr. Peter was currently incarcerated, and I showed that he is at the California Healthcare Facility in Stockton, California. He was transferred during the time, actually, when I was completing my examination. He was in transfer mode. He had requested that transfer because he wasn't doing well in the state penitentiary, and they had set him up for a transfer. Took about 8 months, though, I think he said, before he was actually given back all his boxes and his files so he could continue working on his writ of habeas corpus. So there was a long period in between in which I was not able to speak with him because he didn't have any of his files. Let's see. And when did Mr. Wilson file for the writ of habeas corpus? Are you with us, Harriet?
Jeez.
I've unlocked. There you are. All right.
Don't ask. It took me 45 effing minutes to do that.
Okay. You're live.
Thank
So
you.
hold
I
on.
didn't
Hold on to
swear.
that conversation until afterwards.
Yeah.
It says, when did Mr. Wilson file for the writ of habeas corpus? He filed for the writ of habeas corpus on July 17th of 2024. Now, the only log that I actually have that mentions Mr. Coleman's name, which goes back to whether or not there was any evidence taken on or forensics taken on Mr. Coleman. And it looks like that the statement is placed on the property report for Peter Wilson, not for himself, for Mr. Coleman. But it does say that he consents to search. So consent to search form signed by William Coleman, and consent to search what? And why is it on a property report for Mr. Wilson? It's as if they fingered this guy from the very beginning and had no intentions of letting any part of it go. All right. So what did you think about all that, Harriet?
Huh. I did check into some of the things, and my apologies for because I did look into some of the old news reports on him.
Oh,
and,
did you?
Yeah. And
what did you come up with?
When they went to charge him, they found out that his name, Peter Wilson, was his changed name, but because he was from Iran, they had to charge him under his Iranian name. So I have questions about that.
I have not heard that at all. Yeah, no, that's a good question to be asked, because race and age was definitely something that was asked for. And so that might explain why William Coleman left the country, because my idea is, if he's a young guy, how does he have access to just, a visa and getting out? So if these are students from another country and they collectively change their names or Americanize their names while they're here, that might make some sense. So I'm going to ask that. And what did you find out what that name was?
Oh my God. It's the last, okay. I'm sorry. It was Hamid or Hamid Einalaran. And it really perplexed me because it was bringing back some memories, because I am from the Bay Area, of that.
Hold on
arrest.
before we. Okay, so Hamid, what? How are you spelling the last name?
Well, the last name starts out with EINLOU, Erarin, but the first name is actually spelled HAMLD. And I said, maybe that's a misspelling, but
yeah,
it could be HAMID, but according to SF Gate and other sources, it's with an L instead of an I.
And you said, so the last name EINLOU, what was the balance of that?
Well, I tried to look that up, but it is an Iranian last name. So I had a lot of questions. How long has he been here? How is he,
Harriet, I've asked 3 times and I'm just trying to get the spelling down. EINLOU. Is there more to it?
There's a little bit more, but I can't Google it right now.
So you don't know what the full last name is. All right. I'm going to be very interested in getting that from you. And I love that you are so good on research. All right. So back to what you were saying. Sorry about that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no,
you were indicating that you were in the Bay Area during this time in 1996?
Oh, definitely. And I heard the news, because my parents, especially when I came home from work, had news going 24/7, especially the AM radio. And of course, that was a story that was brought up a lot, for a while in 1996. And if I understand correctly, this person had more than one trial. The first trial was a hung jury, and then the second trial was a few years later, where they believe they nailed him correctly. And but I had a lot of questions. I said, but what is going on with this guy?
Right. Well, I mean, when we start to look at this evidence and we see the things that were done, and maybe the officer thought he could get away with this because he was not American. I mean, I think when it's a second culture or somebody who doesn't quite understand the legal system, it's easier for these police officers to get away with things that are against human rights, obviously, when it comes to policing people. But you are absolutely correct. There has been 2 trials. I want to say the first one was early 2000, and the second one was 2005, if I believe correctly from what he was stating. So, and he was in prison the entire time. Even with the hung jury, he still remained in prison. He has not taken a step out of incarceration since he was arrested for this crime. So did you see anything in any of your research that made you feel like he was complicit with this crime?
Just the red flags as to so many questions as how was he making a living, and according to the sources that I basically saw, which was, I believe, Palo Alto Online, they believe that he was scamming the landlord to try to make a statement to have her sign something, and she was over 55. Yeah, for $300,000.
No, he hasn't indicated anything to that degree. He had 3 rental receipts that the DA tried to insist that he made her sit down and write in that hour that she claims that he had killed her. So that doesn't, I mean, at least based on what I see in what he's telling me. So this would be interesting to note. And we have to understand that they're going to sensationalize. The media is weaponized against individuals when they want it to be. And some of these things could be just false stories, false leads that were fed to them. So I do take it with a little grain of salt in regards to the motives of the officer. If he would, in fact, remove exculpable evidence and plant evidence at the crime scene, what would he say to the media in order to further victimize this individual?
Well, I can look into this a little more. I've had a very busy, unusual week for my situation here, but it just raised a whole bunch of questions more than answers.
Right. It does. And I would love to collaborate with you on that, especially if you could get me that last name. I think that there's some searches that we can do. I know a few private investigators, and I know that Nolan and David Villa as well would be interested and probably have some avenues to be able to look some of this stuff up. Wow. I don't know why you didn't call me ahead of time to tell me you had this information, because I would have been on that before now.
I had an interesting day yesterday, so it wasn't going to happen. Anyways, but I aim to get here, and I have this wonderful background echo here, but it's good.
Are you able to see the show now on your phone?
Oh, I can see it. Yeah, I got my reading glasses on, so.
Nice. So welcome back with us full, but you still didn't get the video working out, right?
I was going to try that, and I said after 45 minutes of trying to unlock this, for some reason it was blocked on my phone, and I had to dig deep. So I had to be my own IT person. I said, I'm not spending another 45 minutes to unlock the camera.
Well, and hopefully they would be in the same location, but I don't know. I've not seen it or viewed it from an actual telephone.
This is just unreal. It kept on saying it's blocked, and I didn't have an explanation. Anyways, we'll get to that later.
Well, and did you find any information on Mr. William Coleman? Because I'm now wondering if there's a possibility that he changed his name as well.
All I know is when I started going down a rabbit hole, and there is some person who is with the last name of Coleman, not this William Coleman, but that wrote some books on the Iranian life of 1979, and I thought, is this person related? Is the person I'm seeing about some book? His father. I had a lot of questions, so I was going down some rabbit holes.
So is it normal? And I don't know if you know the answer to this. I wish Nolan had joined us today, but is it normal for them to allow people here on visas to make changes to their names?
I think since it's the 90s, you might want to try asking the Clinton administration. I'm just wondering.
You mean the best friends of Trump?
Yeah. All I know is I'm seeing things from 1979, the Iranian revolution, and I'm wondering, is this person from before that, which would be actually a good flag if it was during when there was the prince and princess of Iran, and we were under much more better things with them. Did he come here after the collapse of that civilization and during Carter's the Iranian hostage crisis in that era? So, but it is, I think, logically that if they did come here under pressure like that, that they were going to be allowed to change their name. But I don't see him as Americanized, like nationalized, and I don't know. That's my question. Is this person a U.S. citizen with the changed name?
Well,
All I know is they went to charge him. They said we can't charge him under that name. We have to charge him under Ild and whatever the last name started out as.
Well, but so then he would have been locked up under that name, and that would have. Now I get really confused about the whole name change situation. If this is correct and we have the right person, now it really makes me want to kind of dig into it. Yeah. So like just in the last couple weeks, I found out that, and I didn't know this because I don't follow politics for the most part. I vote for a party based on beliefs and how that benefits me as a citizen. And it turns out that Trump was a former Democrat. And I thought that to be extremely interesting because I'm getting all of this, throwback from the Dems, my friends that are Democratic, that this is one of their people. This is their party. This individual that they hate so badly for being a Republican and putting his foot down in these areas as a Republican is something he would have done whether he was a Democratic president or a Republican president. Correct?
Yeah, and there's a lot of saying now that today's Republicans are yesterday's Democrats, and you don't want to really peel people when you say that meant that Bobby Kennedy Sr. and JFK Sr. would be more on the Trump side right now because of how their political leanings are. So,
right.
Yeah. So,
and it makes me crazy because we know Hillary Clinton was originally a Republican during Watergate while she, defended Nixon, and then becomes a Democrat with her husband. It's almost as if it's okay with these people to flip sides based on how it gets them up the ladder. Right?
Yeah. No, she was a young Republican in her teenage years in the school in the Chicago, Illinois area. I'm trying to remember. So yeah, and then comes along. Yeah, it does seem to be that you want to get voted in, you have to go with what your constituents are, and you kind of be like a chameleon and change.
And that's what was interesting about the conversation I was having, is they indicated that I guess Barack Obama and Trump sat together at a dinner, which I've said many times, you guys, look at them. They're hanging out, they're friends. It's now becoming a little bit more true. But that Barack Obama said to Trump, you'll never make it as a Democratic president. Obviously running against Barack Obama, he felt that he was a stronger candidate for being a Democrat. And that's why Trump flips to Republican. And then in that quest for information, I found out that Trump also ran early 2000s as a liberal. Isn't that just proof? Again, we voted him in as a Republican, but we couldn't get him voted in as a liberal. And that truly means that they know as a political society that half of Americans are going to be Republicans, the other half are going to be Democrats. And then somewhere in between are these small pools of independents and liberals and conservatives and an area where we as a majority of Americans are never going to place all of our votes towards those type of parties. It's kind of a sick little system.
All I know is I can think back when my parents were, of course, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s and 90s. They were considerably conservative, but they voted Democrat. So
right,
you can still
because
be conservative.
You have to.
And then, so now you try to say you're conservative as a Democrat, you're going to get screamed at.
Well, you have to vote for the least detrimental person, and that forces you into a party like Republican or Democrat, because who you really want from your own party that you believe and your belief system follows is not going to likely be voted in. So with that, we're at the end of our session. I've got a couple seconds here just to kind of sign off, to tell everybody thank you for watching. I would really like to get more interested in this entire case, and I will have updates as we go along with the Zodiac case. Thank you so much, Harriet, for being here. Everybody have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next Friday.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Oh,